Welcome aboard the crazy train.
Here we go. Here we go. We have a very special guest with us today. It's Nelson Borges. He would tell you, don't forget the pronunciation. It sounds like gorgeous. And if you ever need to remind yourself why, you just have a look at him. So here he is. Nelson, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
So glad you'd come. I have a way of opening this up. We normally start by going on ChatGPT, and we'll have a look at our guest and see what ChatGPT says. So can we see how ChatGPT wants to introduce you?
Yeah, please.
The list is long
You
but
nervous?
distinguished.
Are there skeletons? So it says, Nelson Borges is a dedicated mental health advocate and the founder of the Capillary Wave Community for Men, an organization committed to providing support and resources for men's mental health. The community offers workshops, support groups, and professional guidance to help men address mental health challenges and break the stigma surrounding mental well-being.
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's
What
pretty
about
good.
the first 40 years?
Okay.
So, Nelson, tell us a bit about yourself.
52 years old, and been with my wife, soon-to-be wife, Tanya, for almost 20 years. It's a lifelong engagement. I find that more romantic than being married.
She never knew when it was going to come.
No. She reminds me every couple of years that we're still not married and stuff. She's got 2 kids. I have 2 kids. We grew up in a blended family. Born in Toronto, grew up in Mississauga, moved out to Vancouver when I was 23. Came back in 2010, and yeah, just came back with work and stuff. So,
What took you out west?
the first ex-wife, I guess you could say.
And what brought you back? The next
The
wife.
His second ex-wife. Hey-o. So go back to the early days, man. What was it like being a kid?
Oh man, being an only child, I'm a first-generation Canadian. My parents immigrated from Portugal, from the Azores Islands, and San Miguel to be specific. I'm an only child, but we all grew up in downtown or the west end of Toronto, so we're around the block from each other, all my cousins and stuff. So yeah, I had a pretty cool childhood, I would say. A lot of playing outside, etc. Moved to Mississauga when I think it was grade 2, and then moved again within Mississauga, etc. So my family's large. My contribution to that is just myself. All my cousins have multiple siblings, etc. So, spending time at each other's houses, riding bikes. The neighborhood I grew up on had to be over 15 kids all around the same kind of age. Yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of great memories.
Love that. Tell us about your dad.
Oh boy. My dad, legend. He immigrated to Canada. I think he was like 23 years old, and like most immigrants back then, he went into construction, digging holes, etc. The first language he learned wasn't English; it was Italian. At the time, a lot of the guys, a lot of the bosses and foremen on site were Italian, so he picked up Italian and then he picked up English. Little props to him; he was the first Portuguese foreman in the union.
Hey.
He was a scrapper. He loves telling me his old scrapping stories from the olden days, etc. And he worked in construction his whole life. What can I say about my dad? He always wanted. I'll say this story. All my cousins, not all my cousins, but a few of my cousins, when they hit 18, 19 years old, they would one by one approach my dad to get him a job inside, in the construction field, in the forming. So I'm watching them, and, it was good money. So finally, in between college courses or college years, I said, you know what, Dad, put me in. Like, I want to come work with you. And he went and he I still remember, he went and grabbed his construction boots. And back then, they were all Kodiaks. And, the steel toe was actually showing because of the rips and tears. And he put them on the table, and he said, I wear these boots. You do not wear these boots. So he didn't hire me. So it was one of the first failed interviews I did. He wanted me to go to school. Everything was about education, etc. So he worked hard, man. He worked really hard. Um, these kids today, they're with their parents putting him in so many activities. He worked long hours. So when I played soccer, and I loved playing soccer, and I was the one that rode like he would give me a check and sign the check. So I would ride my bike to the valleys and sign up myself. Ride my bike there and just say, "Hey, my dad gave you this check. Just write down how much it is to register," kind of thing. Um, very. He said something to me once, and he said, "We're not friends, but I'm your best friend." And that kind of resonated with me, and I still use it today. And he is. He's my absolute best friend.
Your dad's still around?
Yeah, they went to retire back in the home village back in Portugal.
Okay.
Yeah, so I talk to him almost daily. You know, he's got his orange trees in his backyard, and that's how he's playing out the back nine.
That's awesome.
Just
I
man.
think you posted a picture on social media the other day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the fucker trolled me, right? Because my cousin, they don't have cell phones or anything technology. So my cousin actually, I'm like, my dad keeps talking about his trees. I'm like, well, send me a picture or whatever. And he sends me a picture of the trees. I'm like, Dad, it'd be nice to see you in a picture. Like, I haven't seen you in a year. So the next day he took a picture of himself with the trees kind of thing. So I'm like, you know what you're doing. So yeah, very funny guy, practical joker. Like his construction crew was his brothers, buddies from their village. So they all traveled together and did different jobs together. And the pranks that those guys would pull on each other, kind of set the stage for myself. So
Yeah. What's when we're talking about your dad, give me the one thing that he said to you, lesson. I mean, I love the thing about I'm not your friend, but I'm your best friend. What else did he instill upon you? Like, what's the thing that you're going to remember him most for?
protection. Protection. Yeah. And like my cousins know like this whole thing, like, we're at an event one time and me and my cousin were sitting on this. I remember sitting on the stage and there was some kind of raffle and they had that big spinny wheel. And the guy that was doing the raffle, I was kind of sitting, by the spinning wheel. And the guy like tapped me in the head, like to move over. Well, my little cousin, at the time he ran and went to tell my dad that this guy put his hands on me. And,
Cool.
Next thing I know, there's a big brawl like in the backstage, et cetera. And it's my dad. I'm like, oh my goodness.
That guy had concrete boots being put on him pretty
Oh
soon.
boy. Right. And, but it's funny. Like my dad will start telling a story of like his scraps and stuff. And he goes, I don't like to talk about it, and he goes, but this one time. Right. And then he just gets up and he starts acting out like the punches and stuff. And so I used to bait him when I was older that I knew I could like trigger him into storytelling and stuff. But protection, definitely. Grade 4, I went to a new school and got bullied like the first day. And I went home crying and stuff. And I didn't go back to school for another couple of days pretending I was sick. And finally my dad's like, what's going on? So I tell him, this kid in school, but he goes, I don't want to get in trouble. He's like, you stand up, don't cause trouble, don't start trouble, but you stand up for yourself and you'll never be in trouble at home. So I was like, okay. So that gave me the confidence to do what I had to do to fight back against the bullies back in the day. And yeah, he's like half my height, but he's iron, right? He was working in the farm since the age of 7. So he's like that farm boy strong and stuff. And yeah, I love the guy.
Best. He sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about you as a dad. You got that blended family. Give me the history of that.
Yeah. Well, when my ex and I divorced, etc., I had, my son and my daughter. My son I adopted. My daughter, she was biologically mine, etc. And then, Tanya had a couple of girls. And, blended families, man, that's hard. It is hard. There's so many dynamics, and the girls, they're all around the same age. So as they got older, it was a new set of problems, right? So 3 teenage girls in a blended family.
Yeah.
I wish that on no man. It was like I didn't know anything for like, I don't know, 5 years. I was the dumbest guy in the world for 5 years. Didn't understand anything. Um, you know, they had their issues with their biological dad, and my daughter having issues, being in a different household, etc. A lot of different dynamics, a lot of different. And you, as parents and co-parents, you just learn on the go.
There's no winning.
Never,
No.
never, even if you'd go rent a cottage or whatever for a week, and, the first 2 hours were amazing, kids jumping in the lake, and then that first little argument over ice cream, and it all goes to shit. I
Real
joke,
quick.
but it's like,
Last trip to the cottage.
here it comes, right? So, yeah. But they, they're all grown now. My daughter's 24, and then Tanya's daughter's 27, 24, and my son's 32. And then my son and Tanya's daughter, they each got married this year, like 1 week apart. So that was
busy.
Yeah.
So adopted child, a couple children through relationships, soon to be marriage.
Wow.
Very
Wow.
soon. Soon's a good word.
Soon.
Another decade and a half, maybe.
Soon's a good word.
What's you as a dad, your parenting style change between any of those, or you stay pretty consistent, or what's that like?
Oh man.
Or do you just pull back and let things flow?
Some days, yeah.
Just put the ice cream on the counter.
Yeah.
Here's the food for the week,
Just
and
feed the animals.
I'll see you on Sunday.
The week will take care of their own.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, like most of us, I think our parenting styles kind of start off with our own, like we take a bit of our dad or a bit of our mom or, whoever's in the picture. And, we kind of start with that. And mostly when we say, well, I can be a better parent. Like I know more than my parents did. Right. So you start doing different things, but slowly but surely, like I became my dad, like for sure. Having girls is very different than having boys. Having girls, you worry about all the boys coming, right? So, I mean, things that I wasn't used to, like, them wanting to wear makeup, back in grade 8 and wearing makeup to school and stuff. And I can't remember a girl in my elementary school that wore makeup. Not to say that it didn't happen, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
So now they want to wear makeup. Now they want cell phones, and that was just starting out, etc.
They don't want to wear clothes that want to cover their body anymore.
No,
crop tops or whatever. These
bathing
things
suits to high school.
Yeah.
Right. All these things, and you're just like, ugh. So we had. I'm pretty infamous for the things that I've put the boyfriends through over the years. Like we had one guy. I think it was the first boyfriend, etc. And kid would come around like once a week, and then it was once every couple of days, and then it was every day. Right. So I come home from work one day and it's sweaty and I'm hot. I've had like just a shitty day, and I open the door and they're all in the kitchen, Tanya and Cassie and this boy, and they're all laughing and giggling and stuff, and I'm like, son of a bitch. Right. So I didn't say a word. I just put down my bag, went into the garage, wheeled out the lawnmower. Right. I just called him over. I'm like, hey, come here. I don't know his name. Still didn't know it back then either.
Didn't care either.
Didn't care. I said, do you know how this lawnmower works? He's like, yeah. He was okay. Cut the lawn. And then I just went inside. So Tanya's like, and I think the kid's like 14 years old or something. Right? So Tanya's like, are you getting it? I'm like, absolutely. I'm getting him to cut the lawn. I'm like, nobody eats here for free. And then all of a sudden Cassie comes with, I shit you not, with a pitcher of iced tea. And I'm like, where are you going with that? She goes, oh, he's going to get thirsty. It's hot outside. I was like, man, I've been working on the weekend, like the whole weekend in the backyard. You didn't even bring a glass of water. I'm like, put my iced tea back in my fridge. So things like that along the way of parenting, like mixing old school, like even the respect thing bothered me a little bit, right? Like I grew up calling, Uncle Sam or Uncle Tony or whatever. Like there was always like a prefix, like Mr. or Sir.
To your parents, like closest friends and that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And these kids, like they're coming there, oh, hello, Nelson. Right? I'm like, that just rubbed me, right? So that whole, I don't want to see old school or old fashioned, but that sense of respect I tried to carry through the years as much as I could. And yeah, but yeah, definitely parenting styles change with age, right? The teenage years and girls, like, I mean, you could give advice, and we had a lot of sit down talks, family meetings, etc. And, they work short term and etc. But you just try to give them the best advice you can. And then you come to the conclusion, like, I'm just going to get you to 18, right? That's my job. After 18, like, whatever you want to do, right? But I made it clear, like, we did a lot of different parenting hacks. Like, we took all their clothes away, right? And then we gave them like one outfit to wear for the 2 days. This is in the summer, so they didn't have to go to school like that. But
Was this a laundry issue?
no, it was back to the respect thing and doing your chores and listening.
Okay.
So we gave them the opportunity to do chores, to earn points, to earn clothes back, right? So if they vacuumed or whatever, pick a sweater, pick a shirt, whatever you want, right? Just little hacks that we tried along the way, like, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. You keep going. And then when they're older, when they're getting out of high school and getting into the college years, then their brains start, forming into young adults, et cetera. So that's a different parenting style and et cetera. So, but now it's awesome. Like, a lot of the kids have come full circle. And
How old are they all now?
32, 26, and 2 24-year-olds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grown. If we had them in here and we said, tell us about your dad, what would they say?
Oh, man.
Would it be the same answer from both,
Yeah,
both
that's
sides
right.
of the
No,
family?
everyone, I think
Or do you
they
think your
should all
kids
have
would
the
say-
same answer. They should all have the same answer. Strict, funny. But I hope that they would say caring, and that, they know I love them all, kind of thing. You know what? Like, when divorce sucks. Divorce sucks when it impacts the kids and stuff. So that's part of the thing that I carry with me, is the guilt of divorce, in a sense, right? Of what it does to the kids and stuff. But yeah, I've had heart to hearts with all the kids, probably over the last 3 years. And yeah, it's full circle. So everyone's in a much better place.
Why do you think you waited so long to have those heart to hearts? Do you think you've had some things impact you in your lives that have like made you want to have those conversations now that they're at the age they're at, or is it something in your life that made you want to have those conversations now?
Yeah, I kind of like mine too. They were always more open with Tanya, like, and then Tanya would come up to me and say, you should really talk to so and so and so and so. Like, they got something. I'm like, well, why can't they approach me directly? Like, I don't know. I feel I'm approachable. And just over time, when the time was right for each of them, I always had that door open, like, if you ever want to talk or anything. And then each of us had that one-on-one kind of conversation, right? So it was probably a bit of growth on both sides, myself and them. That whole adage, like, wait till you're older. I'll explain it to you when you're older. You're too young to understand. You play that kind of thing. And yeah, I'd say when the time was right for both of us, then it happened.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm glad you said loving would be one of your, what's that? Is that a verb? Is loving a verb? Because that's kind of what I think is your, secret power. Because what I've seen and what I want you to talk about from your own perspective is just how much listening, loving, being present, like what that does, and kind of how that led you to the success you're having with Men's Capillary Wave.
What is Men's Capillary Wave, by the way? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
So Men's Capillary Wave is a nonprofit charity. Our purpose is to provide men with the resources, support, and services to help them become healthier in mind, body, spirit. And we do that through a variety of ways. When I went through my own mental health crisis back in 2022, for me, towards the end of that journey, or towards the end of the beginning of that journey, I learned, the coping skills and et cetera. But the only thing I really did, like in terms of coping, it was like, the journaling and stuff, right? But I never reached out outside of therapists. So I did get a psychotherapist, but outside of that, I didn't reach out. Like everything was internal. I was trying to do it alone by myself. Um, and then fast forward to this capillary, I put together what I thought was missing, or what I was probably looking for without knowing it. Right. So, what I've done is I've put together what I call a pit stop crew of healthcare professionals. So, if you imagine a car that goes into the racing, into the pit stops, it's not just one guy or one person that's changing the tires and putting in the gas and all that, right? It's a team, and mental health and the recovery, or the betterment, absolutely needs a team, right? So a team, what does that look like? It's a therapist, but it could be offering different modalities. It's not one size fits all that can help people. Like what speaks to you, Chris, might not speak to Jamie or myself, but this speaks to you. So I put together a variety of therapists that offer a variety of different modalities, meditation coaches, mindfulness coaches, anything that affects men's mental health. So, financial planning, business coaches. We have an employment services team, right? So they'll help the guys write a resume that they haven't written for 20 some odd years or whatever it is, helping guys transition from one career to the next, and then actually do mock interviews with them. Shout out to the team at, VIP. And I'll come back to that. I get their name. VIP Workforce Solutions. And then now we just signed up a partnership with a law firm in family law. Divorce, separation, a huge impact on men, right? And women as well, and kids, everybody, right?
And not just the process of going through it. We were chatting about this before. It's not just a divorce firm that deals with the divorce. It's the after part that this law firm really helps try to like inform people and coach people through, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And give them a shout out too. What was the name of the firm?
Lowen's Law, Adam at Lowen's Law. He goes by the moniker of Dad's Law. So yeah, we just started a partnership earlier this month. We're going to do a workshop in January for the guys called Navigating Divorce. And just what you're saying, Jamie, yeah, like, it's funny, like us people, like we plan a wedding, we don't plan a marriage. We plan a divorce, we do a divorce, we plan a divorce, but we don't plan being divorced parents, kind of thing. So yeah, we're just trying to open up as many avenues for guys to feel better about themselves, mind, body, and spirit.
So back in 22, then, do you want to talk to us a bit about that? Like, tell me about your journey. How did that all start? What were you feeling? What was your path?
Yeah. So I went to Fortino's on Upper Middle, and Guelph Line there. Went to get some bread and some other things. I was driving back home, and all of a sudden the world changed. Like everything was like zooming in and out. I couldn't focus. I started sweating immediately, and then all of a sudden I felt what I thought was a heart attack. Just this whole thing in your body, and turns out it was just a pretty good panic attack. Having been the first time, like going back to the kids and raising them and all those troubles and issues, and stuff. Like I thought my days were, all the kids are out of the house. I'm now an empty nester. I'm starting the back nine of life, so to speak. And yeah, it was just this thing that came in, this panic attack that like I said, I thought it was a heart attack. I went home. Tanya was with a girlfriend. They were doing like facials and masks or whatever, and they watch beaches. They do this every year. So I walked through my house into the bathroom, and I just jumped in the shower because I was like so cold. And within, I don't know, 10 seconds of that hot water, I'm like, I'm gonna die. Like I feel like I'm gonna pass out. And So I jumped out of the shower and thinking like a guy, I put on sweatpants that I had there because I didn't want to be found naked, dead, right? Because I know my buddies would probably laugh about it eventually. Um, so yeah, I got my bearings, etc. Went to the husband of the the girl, my Tanya's friend that was with us, and I went in and I just remember saying, I'm like, Brian, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I don't need you to ask me questions. Just do what I say. And he's like, yep. I'm like, I need you to call me an ambulance. And, he did. And yeah, so, fast forward, this is the tail end of COVID. So people aren't allowed into the hospital with you kind of thing. So I'm just in the ER room and doing a blood test here, EKG there, test here, and waiting, hours in between each one. And I would get these rushes of what I kept thinking was the heart attack, right? Um, Finally, the doctor said, Nelson, everything's good. There's no reason I can see for you to stay here. So, just go home, relax. This is a panic attack, etc. So the next 3.5 months, I wouldn't say bedridden, but I spent a lot of time in bed, and it was just daily anxiety attacks. And never having gone through that before, I wasn't convinced like the doctor was giving me the right diagnosis. So I went to my family doctor. In the end, I think it was 11 different doctors, different cities, just going into the walk-in clinics and just seeing if someone would give me a different answer. And nobody did. They all kept coming back and saying it's anxiety, it's an anxiety attack, etc. Um, Turns out at work we have this benefit, and it was like kind of like a dial-a-nurse kind of thing. So I called, and it was just a conversation. But I can honestly say that conversation, I felt I was being listened to, like the whole way through, and not like no interrupting, no assumptions. Just tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And then she said, I think you. She goes, definitely like anxiety, etc. But I think you even might have vertigo. And I was like, it's the first time I ever said that. And so she goes, go to your doctor, have them do the vertigo test. They'll know what to do. And I'm like, okay. So I went to the doctor's office, said, listen, this is what happened. I need to do a vertigo test. And my doctor's like, nah, you're okay. Right. And I'm like, he goes, well, seeing as how you're here, I'll do it anyway. So, they lie you on your back and they turn your head to one side, then they turn your head to the other side. And then when he put my head behind my shoulders, that's when all of a sudden I saw black, like I was going to pass out. And he's like, holy shit, you got vertigo, which is BPPV, one of the vertigo things. So it's kind of like chicken and egg. What came first, the vertigo or the panic attack kind of thing? Nobody knows. No one can give me an answer. But so every time I was lying on the couch, every time I was in bed and I would lean my head back, that would create another anxiety attack, right? So it was good to get diagnosed finally with that, at least, right? And then one night having dinner with Tanya, and I was having a good day, as most people, that go through anxiety and depression can say, like, yeah, this day was a good day. And just the way the fork hit the plate when I was eating just gave me another panic attack. And that's when I couldn't stop crying. Like, I could not stop crying. And I was like, this can't be the rest of my life. Like, this can't be, like, this sucks, right? Like, I can't function like this, right? It's like someone driving your car. Like, you have no control over your vehicle, like they do whatever they want to do and go as fast as they want to go, et cetera, right? You have no control. And so and then Tanya, so I'll say this, like, when, like, our daughters, each of them had some kind of mental health, like, be it anxiety, depression, which they go through high school. One of our daughters was more clinical, et cetera. So we've had experience dealing with mental health in the family, but when it happened to me, being an empty nester, I felt like such a burden with Tanya. Like, now she's got to go through this again, but with me. When we're going through with the kids, mom's always the nurturer, the dad is, more of the rock kind of thing, right? And she's got to be both. She's got to be my nurturer and my rock, right? And I felt really guilty for having her go through this again, etc. Which is the games that anxiety and depression play in your mind, right? the lies that they tell you, and I'll get into that later. So next day, I said, okay. I made a post on Facebook about, I think it was June, and I just made a post saying, hey, this is what's happened to me, etc. And then a friend from high school, who I haven't seen since high school, she lives in Oakville. She said, hey, I read this happened to me. I read this book. It changed my life. Maybe it can change yours. And the book was called From Panic to Power by Lucinda Bassett. I went and got the book. I'm not a reader, but I read that thing in 2 days. And it was like I wrote the book, right? Like literally everything in that book was what I was going through. So I knew, okay, this isn't new. This isn't just me that's going through this thing, right? Mine's not any different than anybody else's. Turns out the book was written in like the early 90s as well, right? So shout out to Punky, right? Thank you very much. So yeah, so that started what I call my journey back to me. Because those 4.5 months or whatever, like it took everything from me. Like it took my sense of self, my sense of self-worth, took away my sense of humor, which is my go-to.
Can you look back and like, do you know why or what would have triggered it at that point? If like you seem like, hey,
Yeah.
like I'm an empty nester, everything seems to be going great, and then all of a sudden this wall just hits.
That is an awesome question. I know now, like at the time I said it came out of nowhere, but I know now that no, right? It was just a ticking time bomb, so to speak, right? So I relate it now to like a backpack. We all carry a backpack, right? This invisible thing. And the traumas that we've gone through our whole lives, count each trauma as like a rock. Now, the rock is the same size, but some rocks are heavier and some are just lighter, right? But we just keep putting them in our backpack because we haven't really dealt with them. We haven't really, I know, closure or acceptance or any of those kind of words, right? But we carry this bag with us. And when the bag gets too heavy, you tip over, right? So for me, I tipped over driving back home from Fertinos on a great day. I can't really explain it better than that. Like for example, in 2008, I was a sales trainer with the company that I'm working with, right? And I was in Edmonton. I had to ride with one of the reps. Within like the first 10 minutes, I could see that the guy didn't know how to drive. Like he wasn't a very good driver. Well, it turns out he was like from the Middle East and he was a transfer. Come to find out that he had failed his driving license exam like 4 times before they gave him a driver's license. So anyways, he decides to cross 4 lanes of high, like so 2 lanes in one direction, a medium, and 2 lanes in the other direction. And he decides to cross the first 2 lanes, which is fine. Like there's no one coming. But clearly there's 2 cars coming on the second set of lanes, right? So I thought he was going to stop, but he kept going, right? And man, I grabbed everything I could in that car because it was a white pickup truck. It was a black Ford Mustang, and I could see the faces of the drivers, and they were like, eyes wide open, skidding around our cars, etc. And I'm dead, right? By the grace of God, nothing happened. We continued on. The driver remained oblivious to what just happened, right? So I told him, I said, hey, listen, just pull over here, right? I grabbed my bags, called a taxi. I was like, you go about your day. Like, so I say that to say this, is that after that incident, that's 2008, I could not be the front passenger of a car for the next 12 years, at least. I could drive a car, no problem, but to be a passenger in the front seat, sweaty hands, right? And even when I was a manager and I'd ride with the reps, I'd be grabbing the bars and stuff, and they're like, hey, what? And I'm like, I don't apologize. I got PTSD. And I made a joke of PTSD because I thought PTSD was only related to like military experiences. Turns out, no, right? So 12 years of that. Even when I went to Portugal to go visit my dad, he picked us up from the airport. I sat in the front seat because he told me to sit in the front seat, right? Your Portuguese culture, whatever, you're the men sit in the front seat. And I'm like, oh, geez, this isn't going to be good, right? And literally the vehicle that he has, the name's escaping me now, but you're like, it's almost like your feet are on top of the hood, right? And the road is really close
Like
to
a
you.
little Skoda or something.
Yeah, right? And so within like 2 intersections, I'm grabbing stuff, and my dad looks over, he's like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? I'm like, oh, Dad, no. He goes, nah. He goes, you got to stop that. Right? I'm like, okay, Dad, I'll stop PTSD. Right? Um, but yeah, so that was a huge rock that was in my backpack. Right? So yeah, eventually you know your time comes when it comes. You know, yeah, that's the best way I can put it.
Hmm.
So then, through that healing journey, you realized how prevalent and how common some of these mental health issues are, and you decided to get into the field. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I decided to get into the field more so as so in my what I call my journey back to me. Like I did a lot of journaling, did a lot of walking outside, fresh air, things that really helped me. And then my faith is a big part of my life, and the new me does new things. So I was at church, and there was like a little bulletin, and it said, small prayer group, and I'm like, I'm gonna go check that out. So I went, and it was a Tuesday night. Shout out to Larry and people at St. Paul's, um, my family at St. Paul's, and yeah, so we just sat around, and just talked about life and scripture, etc. So I left there, and I was like, I feel really good. So I went back the next week, and then over Christmas, I was sitting on the couch, and I looked over at Tanya. And I said, I think I'm going to start like a mental health support talk, right? And she's like, oh, okay. So, yeah, I put a post on the Burlington Dad. I probably put about 20 posts on the Burlington Dads. I don't know if you remember, Jamie, because I wasn't sure how the algorithms worked.
Yeah.
Right. So Jamie actually messaged me. He goes, hey, buddy, just dial it back a little bit with this, And I'm like, oh, okay, sorry. But anyways, I just said, put a post out and like, hey, anybody want to talk about mental health? And, we had 5 guys show up to the first group, and we met at the Haber Rec Center. And then early on, one of the guys had mentioned that he'd been suffering from depression for like 30 years, never went to therapists, never could afford therapy. And I went home with that. And I said, okay, like, I can see now that sometimes in the darkness, you're the light, right? Um, so I said, okay. God, I can see what you're doing, right? I see what you're doing. And yeah, that started the whole, I said, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to make sure that guys can get therapy when they need it, right? So that started the whole journey of the nonprofit world and learning that.
I remember you sent me a message asking if we could meet up. This was 2 weeks after your first meeting. And you're like, hey, you want to meet up for a coffee, just to chat for a bit? Yeah, no problem. So we met at the Tim Hortons. And you're like, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. I want to create, my own charity. I want to do this men's mental health thing. What do you think about it? And I said, it's a fantastic idea. I'm like, we all in the back of our minds think of like wanting to do this, but I'm like, you have a lot of uphill battles to cross to try and get the support for it, because nobody wants to support that. Nobody wants to make it known that it's okay to try and do this and try and support it. And you said, I don't care. I got this. I'm going to do this. Whether people want to hop on board or not, you said, I've got this. And 2 weeks later, you were right back at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say it snowballed, but it was more of an avalanche, right? And I am so grateful to the Burlington Dad Facebook group platform, and other platforms that are out there, other groups, et cetera, that you could put a message out there and it gets to the people in your community, right? The engagement from the Burlington Dads group, like, it was phenomenal. I wasn't expecting, right? So as we progressed, the membership grew. More and more people started coming out, and yeah, here we are. Like, I don't know, not quite a year, and this morning we're at 133 members that are there. We run our in-person support groups Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7 to 9 p.m.
Explain those a little bit to people, because obviously I understand them. I've been to them, but explain to people what those are that would be oblivious to what you're mentioning right now.
Yeah, so we basically sit around the table. Sometimes it's 12 guys, sometimes it's 6 guys, depending on the night and the week, et cetera, et cetera. And if there are new persons there, attending for the first time. And then the guys that have been there before, they'll give like a 2-minute, bio of what brought them to the table, be it depression, anxiety, be it family matters, whatever their reasoning for coming to the table. So we do that lap, and then the new guys, if they feel comfortable, then they can say what brought them to the table, and 100% of them start to share. Right now, we open the floor up to to go into a bit more deeper as to what brought them to the table, and I can tell you, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a good high percentage. Two things will happen. One, they'll start to tear up and cry. And number two is they'll say, sorry, guys. Right. And the three things is everyone will say, hey, we've all cried at this table, man. Like, that's why there's a box of tissues.
And it's
Right.
true. Like as much as you prepare. So my first meeting was when you were still at the Appleby rink, and like when you walk into this situation, it's a cold, tough feeling to walk into, because you walk into this arena. There's a whole bunch of guys with hockey and a whole bunch of testosterone going around. So if you're somebody that's in the mindset that you're already kind of like in your own head, that was a tough atmosphere to first walk into, and then you walk into a concrete room and sit around a table. And as much as you prepare that, you're like, I'm strong. I'm just going to go in there. I just want to listen to what other people are going through and kind of get an understanding. And that's the kind of support that I need out of this. It was crazy seeing how guys that went in there was myself and one other guy that day that were new to it and had never been. And the other guy was super, super closed off and very quiet and just sat for the first 40 minutes and just listened. And then it came around to him, and you gave him the opportunity to talk, and he just opened right up. And I don't think he was looking at doing that when he went there. I don't think that was at all in his goal when he got there, and nor was it in mine. And when it got to me, and I was just going to be happy to say, hey, like I'm on the board here. I just want to get a better understanding of the group. I ended up in tears, like after 5 or 6 minutes of talking about a little bit of stuff that had happened in life. And it's crazy how that group of a bunch of people that you just don't know, going through a whole bunch of different things, just lets you unload a little bit, drop your shoulders, and everybody there is just an equal, and there was no judgment. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. I think it's something super, super humbling that I think, even if you don't think you're going through anything, I think you need to go to one of those meetings and just be a part of it, because I do really think it changes your whole mindset as to what other people are going through, what you're going through yourself. It rebalances you, I think, a lot.
Yeah. Um, we've I can tell you, like, there's a brotherhood forming at these tables, a bond, you know. Um, uh, I'll circle back. Someone had mentioned one time. Oh, it was actually, it was Brian Burke, the former general manager of Toronto, whatever. But I was living out in Vancouver when he was the GM out there, and the company I was with at the time, the Yellow Pages. He was a guest speaker kind of thing, and he says it was the strongest connection of love is not between a husband or wife or father and son and mother daughter, that kind of thing. It's soldier and soldier. Two guys that my life depends on you and your life depends on me. Our lives, our literal lives depend on each other, and the bond that's formed there, right? I'm a big history buff, World War II. I've read almost everything, every kind of documentary. We know them as the greatest generation, right? That's what they're tagged with. When you watch a documentary about these guys and, they're talking about the old stories, they will smile remembering, certain kibitzing or certain guys that they met along the way. But as soon as a certain question's at, it doesn't have to be a particular question. Anytime they have to remember some fallen brothers, and these are, 70, 80-year-olds or whatever, they instantly start crying, right? And are you telling me that they didn't carry that their whole lives, that kind of mental health challenge, etc.? They'll always say, I've never told my children any stories. I've never told my grandchildren, right? So it is the greatest. I mean, they fought in a world war, you know, but they suffered through it. It's not like they came out of it like the man's man, you know. And those lines I'm looking to kind of chop down, etc. Right? But yeah, we accepted them as soldiers, but they were just men at the young age of, whatever it was, 20 to 27 years old was the average, was the main age there, and they carried that with them their whole lives, right? So at our table, that when I say about the brotherhood, because there's so much commonality. Like for me, it was panic, anxiety, depression. For the next guy, it could be like financial, right? Another guy, it's, he's okay, but his wife is not okay. But yet he has to support the whole family and with the kids and everything, right? So that's a load on that guy. So I don't know, there's 100 varieties of flavor that come to our table, right? But the table, like once you start talking, it's this weight that's lifted off you, like this invisible weight. It's almost like you reach into your invisible backpack kind of thing and just put some of those rocks on the table, right? Because you're not carrying it alone, right? So yeah, that's and the other thing that I'm really proud of, and et cetera, when I step back, is the variety of people, the variety of guys at our table. I can say that the first meeting was, your average 5 white guys, you know, but now our table is like the United Nations, you
And
know.
monetary wise, like even the one that we were at, like there's a multimillionaire at the same table as somebody that is, being evicted from their house, doesn't have a job and has nowhere to go. But at that table, you would never know. Like if you looked at everybody and you listened to their stories, like you would never know. Like money played no role in any of that.
Yeah,
Everybody's an equal.
yeah. I mean, um, mental health, it goes after everybody. It goes after everybody, like, so yeah, some people are what we've done too, because we do our what we call field trips, right? So we go off campus, so to speak, and we've gone and done pottery together at Beyond Pottery, a new business that opened up in Burlington, and the 3 ladies there were so nice to have our group there. And for those couple hours, we all made a variation of a bowl, right? And none of us are Picassos, but it was just that time of working with your hands and camaraderie with the guys, and right, like it was just awesome. This past week we went to Shop Time Studios with William Nelson, like, and all we built was like these, the wine barrel things that you like drill into, and you can make tea lights out of them and stain them or whatever. But the joking that went on, right? And here's the thing, guys. You know, through my whole journey of this, like people have asked me, like, what's one thing someone can do to improve their mental health? Like, what's the one thing? And I've now come to the realization, and this is my answer now, is that I wish it was just one thing that you can do to improve your mental health. The the one thing at the top of the list to contribute to either good mental health or poor mental health is connection, right? Like we're here sitting, like, across a table or whatever. There's a different energy than if this was on a Zoom, where we just see 3 faces on a screen. This connection of sharing of energy, um, sitting beside a guy at a table, and when he's really down, you just putting your hand on the guy's shoulder and him putting your hand on my shoulder. Um, that that is the thing that we're really falling behind now, with the whole thing of cell phones and technology, et cetera, right?
Everybody's got to get out of their box. Everybody's stuck in a box, and if you don't get out of that box, it doesn't help you.
Yeah.
Drives you
And you have to
backwards.
realize that you're in a box.
For sure.
You have to look around you and just your awareness of like, this isn't life just sitting here, I can honestly say, guys, like what happened to me um, saved my life, because I'd go to work, I'd come home, eat, have a couple of drinks, you know, rinse, repeat, wash, whatever, copy, paste, next day. I wasn't going out, I wasn't going for walks, I wasn't doing things outside of the house, right? And this made me change my ways. I wasn't really connecting with anyone. outside of my like little neighborhood, right? Um, so the connection of like is just someone who feels connected. You know how much because it happens at it happens at home, it happens at work. So you need connection at home with your kids, with your spouse, whatever. You need connection at work, with coworkers, et cetera, and being productive, doing something. And then you need connection at play, right? So you go out with the guys or whatever it is, and you know, I'm I was floored. Like a lot of guys that come to our group don't have friends. For me, I'm like, wow. Like, I'm still fortunate that my friends in grade 4, we're still buddies. We're having lunch on Sunday kind of thing. My friends in my neighborhood, my friends in the campground that we go to. I can't imagine not having that kind of connection, right? Um, and then you put on top of that like anxiety, depression, other things, other ailments, and they tell you like, no, like you're not going to go there. Like you're going to feel like this. This is what's going to happen to you. Da 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 da. Right? So they're liars, right? They tell you that you're different from everybody else. You're unique. Like they don't know what you're going through, right? But once you come to the awareness of saying, nah, like this is not the rest of my life. Like there's more to life than being alone, you know. Uh, and then some people convince themselves that they like to be alone, right? And I'm sure I like my quiet time, but there's a difference between quiet time and loneliness, right? And then, when you go back to the overarching thing of mental health, I said connectedness, stress, right? I know you guys are going to have a guest, hopefully soon, Mustafa Hassan. He's one of the guys that I'm blessed to have met, and he's in our pit stop crew. You know, um, he talks about the body and energy and stuff, and it's just mind blowing stuff. But he said, forget about cancer and heart disease. Stress is the number one killer globally, bar none. Right? And he said sometimes it's not even close because what stress does to your body, right? We get diagnosed with like a bad kidney or maybe like some lung issues or whatever it is, but that happened from stress, combined with like maybe some um, things that run in the family or whatever it is. But the overarching thing is stress,
Well, it leads to heart attacks, leads to drug use, leads to alcohol abuse,
right?
leads to everything
Yeah.
for sure.
But when someone, like 70, the statistic is 70% of men who have some kind of mental health ailment, be it a little bit or a lot, 70% don't go seek help. And 70% of all suicides are adult male. Like the numbers are side by side, right? So why don't men go seek help? You know, that's a big ball, right? Those now you're getting into the stigmas of people are going to think I'm weak. People are going to think um, I'm this or I'm that. I'd rather just stay quiet. I'll figure it out myself. Like, I've been through this before.
And the public perception. It's not just your own perception of what you feel like. It's the public perception. Oh, that person has issues. That person has mental health issues, right? Like that's looked at as like a stigma, or it
Yeah,
has been looked at as like a bad stigma to
for
have.
sure. Yeah, that's the structural stigmas, right?
Yeah.
Um,
He's supposed to be the man in the family. He needs to man up. He needs to toughen up and just
yeah,
deal with it.
you know, and that's I've run into people that they have the opposite. They have the old school approach or the old school mentality, like the whole suck it up, like that happened to me, I got through it, that kind of thing. It's like, what, good for you, man. Like I'm happy for you that, but there's a lot of you're assuming that people have the tools and the skills to do it themselves. That's what your assumption is, right? And we're all built differently.
And that guy's great until he hits the wall. Once he hits that wall and that
Right.
backpack's full.
Yeah. But he won't blame it on the backpack. Might blame it on something else and not see it, right?
Yeah.
I know this too, that change has to start. You're the one who changes it. You're the one who is in control of your journey, right? And if you want a better version of yourself, then there are absolute things you can do, not just one, multiple things you can do to help you. and it is a grind. It is hard. It's some days it's one step forward, maybe two steps back. The next day it's three steps forward, one step back. Like last week, I had an anxiety day, right? I think I had too much caffeine. That was one of the things I had to adjust. I couldn't have a caffeine.
Is there such thing as too much caffeine?
Yes.
Okay.
Apparently there is, and it sucks, right? But like my first cup of coffee couldn't be a caffeine coffee. It had to be a decaf, right? And then I could kind of introduce caffeine as the morning went on. I guess that day maybe I had a little bit too much caffeine or something. But what would have knocked me out for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days, just took me out for an afternoon. All right. And I feel it coming. I know it's coming, et cetera. So, I adjust. But learning that adjustment takes a while. But you can get there faster with talking about it, putting it on the table, by seeing a therapist, right? Some people don't believe in talking to a therapist, et cetera. And I challenge them, if there's something going on with the car, like outside of an oil I don't even think I can change the oil of my car. Like, hey, I don't even know where the oil pan is anymore on these cars or whatever, right? But if there's an issue with your car, you take it to a mechanic. If you break a leg, you go to the doctor, right? But if it's mental health, for some reason that doesn't require any kind of attention outside of yourself, doesn't make sense, right? But now we're starting to talk about this, right? We're starting to talk about how silly it is to not go for help. Like, why not? You might learn something. I don't know what the number is in our group, but there's a lot of guys that have gone for therapy for the first time, or the first time in a long time. And, you could see it in their faces the next time they come to a group meeting, right? It's not like everything's solved, but things are lighter, right? And they're on a really good path. But again, it takes work. It takes a lot of work. And one of the recent lines that I read, and this one will stay with me forever, and it's, the oak tree lies in the acorn. Right? So you think of this big, massive oak tree. Well, it starts off as an acorn, right? But in order for that acorn to grow into an oak tree, it has to release itself from the tree, right? It has to crack, and then it can grow. But in order for it to do that, it has comfort in the oak tree. It has life connected to the tree, but it has to release itself. So we have to release ourselves from our comfort zones. I was incredibly comfortable playing EA NHL for 2 hours, 3 hours a day, every day. I was comfortable doing that, right? But when we don't have purpose, we seek pleasure. That's another one that I learned that's going to stick with me. And purpose can be, hey man, like my purpose today is to walk 10,000 steps or 20,000 steps, or go for this walk, or do this hike, or read or write, or whatever it is, right? There's a lot of things that we build, and once we do that, then the path becomes clear. We can start to see the path, right? But when you're in it, it's like you're in the middle of the Amazon, right? And you don't see anything.
Tell us a little bit about the support from your professional fiance over your journey since 2022.
Professional fiance. There's a Christmas gift idea. I'm just gonna jot that down. Her support. Oh man.
Has she been your rock?
More. She's been my nurse. She's been my therapist sometimes.
Did she save you in all this?
For sure. Yeah. She was there, right there with me, fighting, and there are times where she didn't know what to say, and there are times where, if someone keeps asking me, how you doing? How are you? Right? Those for me were becoming triggers. It's like, like, how am I supposed to be? This is what I'm going, but man, I don't know. I'm going to get all emotion. Love conquers everything. It conquers ego. It conquers everything. So I let her love me. That make sense? I let her love me so that I didn't stay in bed the whole day. That I got up and I walked around and so forth. And when some days she would give me a hug. Some days, she might want to give me a kick in the ass. All out of love, right? And not to say that she went to took any courses of how to deal with a spouse that is going through a mental health crisis or a breakdown, et cetera, right? Like, we had the experience of the kids, but we're not doctors, but she's everything. She was everything to me. And I feel very blessed and fortunate to have that. And then I think about the guys that don't, right? Like, who's their rock? Who's their support? So that's another thing Capillary is here for. Like, hey man, we'll carry you. Some days you'll carry me. Some weeks I'll carry you, right? There's no, I guess there is a finish line in life, but in my faith, like what's beyond this life is way better.
Where are you guys headed? Where's Capillary in 6 months, in a year? What do you see yourself doing?
I can see more people, more guys, more members. We're going to be doing more workshops, right? Like specific workshops, like the in-person support groups. They're more general kind of conversations, et cetera. Some specifics. We bring in guest speakers sometimes to talk at those in-person support groups. But I can see like a series of workshops on different subjects, like parenting for a child with mental health, navigating divorce, and this we bring in, professionals to give us a talk. Aging parents. A lot of us now are taking in our moms and dads and supporting them, right? That takes a toll, right? Is there a better way to do it? Maybe. So let's learn about it. Let's learn the different paths that we can take. It's kind of like this, I think I'm calling it the Mental Health Compass series, right? Some of us just need direction and, to find out where north is. We're working on a project now with Evan, and he brought the project to us. And Evan's a young firecracker of a kid who just graduated with a psychology degree. We're putting together a program called Motor Mind Therapy Project. We're looking at taking 12 at-risk youth, ages probably 17 to 24. We're going to rebuild a car, not from scratch, but we're going to rebuild a car. And over the course of 3 months, these kids are going to learn some skills. They're going to learn teamwork, obviously a lot of different benefits, like getting them out of their homes and out of the video games and all that kind of stuff, and getting their hands dirty and greased up. And it's open to, boys and girls, whoever wants to be part of the 12. And along the way, we're going to video it, make snippets. The kids will use the social media, all that kind of stuff to promote it. So there'll be an aspect where the kids learn, digital marketing and all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the 3 months, our goal is that the kids are a lot better than when they came in, right? We're also going to give them group therapy throughout the 3-month journey, right? Because as soon as they'll start bonding together, it's kind of like a new hockey team that's being formed, right? And they'll start bonding. So then they'll probably be more open to talking openly with their own pit crew, so to speak, right? So that's one of the projects we're really excited to work on. I welcome any more ideas. I'm probably jotting down more notes than I have ever in my life. Just a random thought comes into my head and I jot it down and kind of put it on the whiteboard. And so by this time next year, I'm hoping to expand Capillary, because right now the average age is, I'll say, 40, 42 years old is the average age. We've had as young as 23. We've had as old as 70 come in through come at the table. But I think there's an opportunity here where the next generation of men, right, could benefit. The kids that are in between, before university kind of thing, in between high school, university, and expand our programming to support a lot of their needs, et cetera, and give them, direction and stuff. I tell people, like, this office at 600 Brant, I mean, I could work from home, like just go on the computer and make my calls, et cetera. But coming here, it's a different energy, right? And you feed off of each other and stuff, right? So it's creating spaces like that for the next generation, for even the guys right now, right? Creating space that just allows people to connect on an emotional level. And I don't know if Anything's deeper than emotional level.
What can the public do to help you, help support you in your initiative? What can the public do to get involved or support you?
So now that we're a charity, we build programs and we go looking for grants, right? So there's a lot of grant opportunities. There's when it comes to the community, there's from the business community, there's obviously sponsorships and partnerships that we'd be happy to talk with a partner and see what that looks like. If the causes mean something to them, you know, more than happy to work with the business community. When it comes to like the actual individuals, it's mental health will touch every single family. It just will. Like someone will know someone, right? And unfortunately, the way the world's going so fast, I think the need is going to increase year over year. So participating in workshops, donations, of course, donations are, you know, around Christmas time, it's tough, you know, because there's a lot of different organizations doing good and asking for donations, right? So, but donations, absolutely. You know, if we can say, hey, like we know we have X amount of dollars every month that can pay for this, and that, right? All the better. One of the things with our therapists, like they're in our community, and the partnership that I have with them is, listen, I don't need you to pay for advertising and all that. The currency is time. So if you give our guys X amount of free therapy sessions, then you'll have access to the whole group. And 70% of the group are insured. You know, maybe 10% or 20% might be underinsured, right? So let's call it 60% of the guys have insurance, right? So they have access to those. One of our therapists, Nadine, she's amazing, right? Amazing. And she's like, Nelson, I'm almost booked solid here, you know, with a mixture of, you know, both sets, right? So she's been an awesome help.
She's really donating a ton of time. Your
Absolutely.
minimum ask of all of these therapists was very minimal, and hers has been a lot more than that.
And you know what, Jamie, she was one of the first ones when I started putting it out there about this men's mental health group. Like she wanted to help right away in any way she could, right? So I'm always a believer that God puts people in your path, right? And yeah, we're blessed to have her on the team, etc. Um, all the other guys, the people on our pit crew, you know, they're all awesome. I'm about to start saying names, so if I might forget one or two, but I'd hate to do that. But if you go on our website, www.capillary-wave-community.org, just look at our pit crew, and you'll see all the and the supporter section as well. We have community sponsors, et cetera. So it's a community thing, you know. You give into the community, community gives back. I think the way it should have always been in the history of the world, we would be a lot better off.
Well, you're doing big things, buddy. Should we make this a little bit lighter, and should you get into a
Yeah.
little bit of firepower here?
Go hot seat for a minute.
Yeah.
Get the fun stuff out of the way. Love what you're doing, man. Can't say that enough. Just before we start to have some fun, I mean, you know, we've been fortunate enough to meet some pretty awesome people, and you're right at the top of that list. So just keep doing it, man. Thanks. Super impactful. So I got a few fun questions. The first one is, we'd love to hear your favorite dad joke.
It can be in Portuguese. We wouldn't understand it. It can be in Italian if you want to tell it with your hands.
What did the father buffalo say to his son before he left for college?
The Yellowstone joke, eh?
What did the father buffalo say to his son before he left for college?
Bye, son.
Yep. Yeah, that'll do it. We should actually, this should be the way we end the show.
Yeah.
We should tell the dad joke, and that's it for the day.
And I'm out.
That's actually how we'll do it. Yeah, perfect. Great one. So you've said a few things that I've really liked, especially when it comes to your dad. But one of the questions we love to ask all of our guests is just, what's the best piece of advice given to you by a dad? Could be yours, could be a mentor, could be anything. Best piece of advice.
He's pulling deep. He's
Yeah.
pulling deep.
Well, I went back to the one he said earlier about his dad. Like, I'm going to use that. I'm not your friend, but I'm your best friend. That's deep.
That's been the big one.
Yeah.
Being authentic, being your authentic self. He didn't phrase it that way, and it loses in translation. But to be authentic to the people around you, right? Don't be fake. You know, people pick up on energy, etc. So just being your authentic self to people around you, and you will attract. Right? There's that. He didn't say. I wish he did, but he says there's a story about, if you go chasing butterflies, you're going to miss because they're going to fly away. But if you build a garden, the butterflies will come. Right? So it's building, it's attracting, not chasing. Right? So I think when you're authentic, you attract. I'm adding to it, but
Yeah. Next question, and I know you're going to excel at this one. We have a question we call Dream Car Garage. We're going to ask for what's your daily, what's your winter beater, and what's your flex. What's in the Dream Car Garage?
oh. Can you ask me the first one first?
Let's go the daily. What's
Daily?
the daily?
That's the 77 Pontiac Trans Am.
That's
That's
quite the daily.
that's
Fireboat on the hood?
that's the-
What are we talking?
That's the Burt Reynolds T-top Smokey and the Bandit son of a bitch.
That is quite the daily.
That is my daily. T-tops off.
Take you back to high school, eh?
Oh man, that car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my dad had one of those. He was right around, it was late 70s, might have been right around that.
Yeah.
His was a white and blue one, but yeah, I like those cars. Winter beater.
Winter beater. You know what? I wish I had. I'll go back to my original winter beater, my very first car, which was my Datsun 210 baby blue. Her shifter, stereo worth more than the car. It was an Alpine. The Alpine just it shook the whole car. I would even, like, the heat took forever to get on. So when I drive the buddies to the bars or whatever it is, we'd get in that. We were just freezing. Like, you could see the frost on the seats. And it actually had carbon monoxide. Like, the exhaust would come in through the back seats.
Remember ice scraping the inside of the windows?
Oh, my.
I had a car like that.
I had it was a stick shift, so I had to have a sweater on the stick shift or my hand would, like, freeze to it. So I'd love to relive those memories, actually, as the winter beater.
So that's a great one. That's maybe one of my favorite answers we've had. Go back to the one that's wildly impractical. The one that's definitely not a winter beater, but all the memories. And then a flex. What's the one where if you had all the money in the world, what are you driving?
The Cadillac from Scarface. Like the big fat Cadillac with the leopard kind of velvet seats.
Nice.
Like cheesy everything, like top down. That's what I would just roll down the QEW with for sure.
Just gas gauge going
Just
like
a
this.
boat. Yeah.
Our last guest was EV and you were all gas.
That's the best. You imagine that comes together in his driveway and you roll by that house.
Yeah.
That's that like meme with like, I'm not going to tell everybody when I win the lottery, but there'll be signs.
Yeah, there'll be signs.
And then just last one. And I know you love food like I love food. What's your favorite thing to eat? What's the one food you can't go without?
Is seafood a food? Like all the seafood?
Your answer is your answer, man.
Yeah. My mom's octopus stew, going to my Portuguese roots. That is far and away I could eat that daily.
You brought some of that in the other day. Not your mom's,
Yeah.
but you brought some in the other day, and it was phenomenal. You couldn't even tell it was octopus. It was. I love octopus, but it didn't taste like octopus. It was so good.
Yeah. That's the Portuguese Grill House in Waterdown. Those guys are awesome. Yeah. Anything from the sea. Give me crab, lobster. That's pretty pricey to eat every day, but
it's all right, man.
If I fish for it, I could eat it, I guess.
So we talked about a lot of stuff. Is there anything we missed? Like, is there anything that you want people to hear?
Someone had made a post, I don't know if it was this morning on the Burlington Dads group, talking about, it was a quote, so it wasn't necessarily his quote, but it talked about, hey, congrats to the dads who are fighting and not giving up and taking, doing everything to make the family happy. And that struck me this morning, right? Because I understand the message. I do, right? And some people might need to hear that message, but I think moving forward, I think we need to change that kind of message where the family happiness doesn't have to come at the cost of the man, right? Why does it have to? It shouldn't, right? My dad is my absolute hero in my life. Do I wish we had a bigger house or whatever? Nope. Do I wish we had different cars? Nope. He worked his ass off. Do I wish he came to my soccer games more? Yeah, I do. But I understood, like, he worked those hours that he just couldn't make it. We have to change what it is to provide for our family as a man. What does that mean? I mean, we have to change it to say, hey, we provide love. Yeah, there's necessities that the man provides, like the mom provides, et cetera. There's necessities that we have to provide. But let's look at, what should really be the necessities. It's like going to games with your son, going to the park with your kid, creating life experiences. That's what the next generation of men need, right? Is just a lot more love. We lost a lot of past generation dads, right, to alcohol, to different vices, et cetera, because they worked a lot, in jobs that are backbreaking stuff that I could never do, you know. So changing the narrative of what men are supposed to be today moving forward, getting rid of those stigmas. That's the one thing that I really want to get across in this in this chat today. This chat would have not happened 10 years ago, right? And to think 20 years ago, when I told my dad that because after a month of being at home, my dad's like, "Hey, what's wrong? Like, tell me, like, you're not acting like yourself." Our conversation, I'm like, "Well, this is what happened, Dad." And he's like, "Oh, I've had that since I was 23. I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, never talked about that thing in my life with my dad." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, you get the shakes and sweats and yeah." In Portuguese, you call it nerves. Everything is nerves, right?
He just lit a cigarette to get over it, though.
He goes, "Just have a little bit of whiskey and warm lemon water, and you'll be fine." Right? So I honor his work and what he did for me to provide, for the life that I have. I don't honor his, medical license, you know.
But there is something to be said for a shot of whiskey and a little bit of squeeze of lemon.
Let's before we discredit it, let's try it.
Yes, yes. And at times it helps me having that, that one shot, et cetera, maybe two shots. But yeah, in all seriousness, it's time, man. It's time to change the fucking story with guys. Like, the new definition, a man's man. Ask your kid, ask your son or your daughter, is daddy a man? You know what I mean? Like, what that means to your children. And that's the definition we should be living for.
It's a great thought, man. Thank you for all you do. You're a pioneer in this field right now. There's not a lot of people doing it, so kudos to you for doing what you're doing, and thank you so much for being on Shit My Dad Taught Me.
Shit My Dad Taught Me.
We're taking this to the next level, and you're helping us get there. So thank you so much.
I wish we had some whiskey and some warm lemon water to wrap this up. But thank
Miles?
you guys.
Great times, man.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, take
Cheers.
care, bro.